Welcome to Screen Quest, a podcast where a fellowship of film lovers and armchair movie experts plays film roulette. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Waterman, joined by my loyal party members, Will Rotondi
Hey, how's it going?
and May Finch.
Hello, hello.
If you couldn't tell from our attire, tip the hat here. We're talking about The Quick and the Dead on today's episode as part of our first taste of trope soup. Very excited about that. We are also going to draw a side quest. But first, Mr. Rotondi has our film word of the day, which we haven't done in a little while. So, Mr. Rotondi, what is our film term today? And can you talk us through it?
Hopefully I can, if I don't stumble over anything here. But I really wanted to chat with you guys about the Dolly zoom, which is a technique that does show up in The Quick and the Dead. And almost gives me vertigo. And I think it's a really interesting technique because it showed up in film as far back as Hitchcock, where it was kind of perfected, and has since come up in other pop culture films to include Jaws. I won't name off any others because I would like to hear from you guys if you've seen this technique before or think it sounds familiar, but it's basically like a recap of what exactly the Dolly zoom is. You've got a camera that's usually, or at least back then, these days, probably a little bit more flexible, but back then you would have a camera that's mounted on a dolly, which is a wheeled cart that's on tracks, and you would either push the camera forward or backward. And as you're doing that, you're trying to keep the camera fixed on the subject of the frame without having that size of the subject change. So you're actually zooming in or zooming out with the camera at the same time you're physically moving it. And so it looks like the subject is still, hasn't really changed much, if at all, while the background gets distorted. So if the background looks like it's zooming out while the character you're looking at is actually zooming in, or if there's like that weird sort of like disorientation with how everything's arranged in the shot, then that could very well have been the Dolly zoom. And as I mentioned, it came up in Alfred Hitchcock, actually conveniently in Vertigo. Although I think he tried it out in Rebecca the few years prior, but Vertigo is kind of like, if you're thinking of it, that's probably where it started. So but yeah, so with that in mind, and hopefully, unless there's any points that I missed, have either of you seen a film that had this incorporated into it?
Many.
Yeah. Anything you want to, that's like memorable besides like Jaws or?
Jaws is my favorite, so you kind of took that, but it's used very famously in a scene that I won't spoil. But it's the entire scene is all about a specific character's mental state in this sort of like anxious state, and then they see something happen, and the Dolly zoom is used to tremendous effect to show sort of the shock and just instant terror of this particular character. So I love this technique, and that is probably my favorite example, of course, besides Vertigo, but like two of my favorite movies right there. But yeah, I've seen it over and over. It's one of those things that I always do the DiCaprio point whenever I see that film, because I think when it's done well, it's a very cool thing. I'll give an honorable mention to Goodfellas, in the scene where Henry and Jimmy are talking towards the end of the film, and it's used to sort of convey this nervous energy. The walls are closing in as they're talking in the diner. Really, really cool. But how about you, May? Do you have a instance that you like?
So I feel like it's usually used, like you mentioned with Jaws, to show confusion or like discombobulation. And so a way it's used kind of differently that I liked is actually in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I think I'm partly picking this just because I recently rewatched it, but
Yeah,
it's used to kind of like show the jump and transition between different universes there, which I think is a great use of it. It's also
yes.
very confusing to experience, I'm sure. So it kind of goes with the original use of the Dolly, but adds to it.
What about you, Will? Do you have a favorite use of this, or one that stands out to you in your film repertoire?
Uh, I would say I actually like the one in this film as much as it throws me. And it does kind of, I mean, if they had done any more of it than they did, I probably would have gotten sick. Because there's like, you actually mentioned DiCaprio, conveniently. There's a part where his character is, I want to say it's the guy, right? His second to last duel, right? Where it's, I think, oh geez, now I can't remember the guy that he goes on that he fights against.
Is it the con man, or not con, the ex-con that's like escaped in the?
I want to say it is. Yeah, yeah. And so
The smelly guy?
The smelly guy, yeah.
Yeah, that guy, yeah.
Scars, I think.
Which is, yes, thank you. Oh, it was killing me trying to think of his name. I was like, I can think of everybody else in this on the lineup. Scars, which is convenient because he's got a very prominent facial feature across his his cheek and everything. But yeah, so when they're dueling at the very end, and it's just like this, it's sort of like a combination of using the dolly zoom to like zoom in really fast on both of them, but also at like an angle, so like a Dutch angle where you're already sort of off balance, and then it's just like twisting in, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, like it's almost too much, like, but it also feels very much in keeping with Sam Raimi and how he likes to play around with like, very quick kind of over the top camera angle work. So yeah, I think I'd have to go with that. It's the most prominent one. It's the most relevant one, I guess, to talk about based on what we watched. But yeah, Goodfellas, definitely. That's like film school was what we taught, where we learned about that, I think. And trying to feel, I guess, think if there's anything else, but those two off the top of my head. And definitely Jaws. I mean, the scene where he's on the beach after don't give away too much to anybody who hasn't seen the film.
Yeah. I know at least one person on this podcast hasn't, which is why
I wasn't going to say anything.
No one was hurt. Everybody was fine. It's just a beautiful day at the beach. There's no shark. There's no shark. It's fine. So
I thought Jaws was the heartwarming tale of a young boy and a shark that become friends.
It is. It's actually that's close.
Sure.
It's about three men that become lovers with a shark, and one of my favorite recut trailers called Three Men and a Shark, and
they're saying
place it as a rom-com. It is so great.
Must love Jaws.
Must love Jaws. That's what it is. Yeah. Must love Jaws.
I feel you on that. Yeah.
Very, very good. Anyway, yes.
Moving on.
So I love that we tie that into today's movie, which, if you haven't guessed it, as I've said already, is The Quick and the Dead. And I'm really excited to hear what Will has in store for us, because I enjoyed watching this my first time, but I liked it even more the second time. So Will, guide us through this discussion. What do you got on the agenda for Trope Soup?
No side quest?
Oh, duh.
This is true.
Wow, May keeping me honest. Thank you, May. Yeah. I'm just, that's how excited
She's
I am.
Wait a minute.
I jumped right over
Quick
it.
drop.
Don't deny me.
All right. Well, let's swap over to our game view here, and I will draw a side quest. That is a good shout.
Chris is like, look, if there's a side quest, it's because I say there's a side quest. That's how this town is run.
Our side quest is going to be known only in myth, which is it's a new one that we made for our new batch of cards. So here is the prompt here, because I know we didn't go over these when we revealed some of the new categories. This one is: talk about a film you've seen that you can't find anywhere today. I would also probably accept for this one a film that you're aware of as well. So we're going down the obscure route here for this particular category.
We already covered mine, so I think Will should go.
Go for it if you want. Well, yep.
Have either of you ever heard of the movie Surf Ninjas?
Yeah.
Have you seen it, Chris?
Yeah, of course I've seen it. It was like in that era of like kid-friendly martial art films like Three
Yes.
Ninjas,
Oh my
and I feel
gosh.
like there was a couple of others, but it was kind of on that like Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, excuse me, like hype train
Yes.
era. But continue. I won't steal your thunder here. What?
No, you can fill in the gaps, man. And I actually, all right, so I'm gonna be honest with you. Right around the holidays, I found this thing on Amazon, and I was like, I cannot find anywhere you can stream this film. Like the library doesn't have it. Nobody has this movie, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this movie wasn't like canceled for being like. I mean, I'm sure there's like stereotypes and stuff in it, but it's not
Sure.
like blatantly awful in the like ways that other films have not aged well. You know, it's still like I guess not acceptable is the right word, but it's not like something that you couldn't watch and still enjoy for what it was when it came out, because it's very goofy and it is intentionally like, I guess, what was it, like the long and the short of it is it's two brothers who are growing up in California who find out that they're actually like princes to this, it's not really a defined culture, right? Like it's just a very
I don't think
generic
so.
Asian island that they come from, and
Yep.
or like in, maybe could be in the Philippines, somewhere in there. I don't know. They sort of like, they don't try to be too specific, probably because of the fact that like the main villain who overthrew their country is played by Leslie Nielsen, who shows up for like all of like maybe 20 minutes of this film, as like this sort of quasi samurai. Maybe he doesn't really do a whole lot of fighting. He gets his butt kicked most of it, but yeah, he sends out his warriors to go track down these two kids and kill them, and they're befriended by basically the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the movie, who helps them learn, like unlock their inner martial arts power that they didn't know that they had, and one kid who can like use his video game to predict what's going to happen in the future and guide his other brother. It's just so over the top, and yet I love this movie. And it's got like really, who else? It's got Rob Schneider in it,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
is
He's like the
trying to
comic
play a
relief, right?
teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah. And oh man, and I feel like one other guy I'm missing. Who's the cop who's in it? Do you remember? He's been in something else too from
I'm
that time
looking at the
frame.
IMDb page now.
Oh
Um,
man, I want to say
there
he
are
was in
not a
another
whole lot
cop
of
film.
recognizable people besides the one that you've mentioned, or the people you've mentioned so far.
Wait,
Yeah.
is this a kids movie?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I definitely watched it as a kid. Like, it's not, there's not like over the top violence in the sense of like, it's like Chris said, it's very much like Power Rangers. So you go into it, it's just like martial arts action. Pretty sure nobody dies except for Leslie Nielsen at the very end when he gets electrocuted. And even then, it's really goofy.
Yep.
I was gonna
This
say, is
is
this like the Shark Boy and Lava Girl of your generation?
it's a worse, probably a way worse version of that. Like, yeah, it's I'm looking at like the some of like the trailer footage that was playing on IMDb, and then like even the cast list. So boy, talk about core memory unlocked. So there's a character by the name of Baba Ram, and one of the few things I
Yes.
remember is they start singing the Beach Boys song.
Yes.
Bar Baba Ram. And I think that's probably the whole reason the character's named that.
Yep.
And yeah, there's not a whole lot else. It seems like a movie, from what little I remember of it, that was just probably like pitched as like just like a concept of like, what if we had ninjas that surfed? Like, and then
Yeah.
somebody was like, yeah, sure, build a movie around that, I guess. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I love
Oddly
it.
enough, not a whole lot of surfing happens in this film. It is important to the story at one point, but not a lot, sadly. But yeah, I watched it and I was like taken right back to my childhood, and I thought this is, I don't know, it's still entertaining. Like, it's not amazing by any means. In a lot of ways you could argue it's a terrible movie,
I
but
imagine.
it's just a lot of fun. I just had a lot of fun watching it again. So anyway, that's my pick.
That's a great
Amazing. I'm
one.
very glad we did not skip this segment.
Me too. So to clarify, you had to buy this on physical media to watch it. Is that
I did. I did not have to
How much
pirate
money
it.
did you spend?
It wasn't a...
That's what I really want to know.
Actually like $4. I was
Okay.
surprised. I was pleasantly surprised Amazon even had it. And I did not have to drop some serious dough in order to revisit my childhood. So yeah.
That's a fair price, I think, for for Surf Ninjas.
For nostalgia.
Yeah.
It was on DVD. I feel like there was a special feature on there. I can't remember. It was like the trailer for it, and then like maybe one other thing. You know, like the really low budget, like little DVD intros that they'll have, and then like the special features. So yeah.
Yeah, there's some bare bones special features back in the day for sure. The trailer was like the one thing that you could be sure to say that you had special features on your box art. You just throw the trailer in, stick it in, and like there you go. It's got special features.
Side B. Yeah, you got to flip the DVD over. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna transition us back to our regular hosting mode, and I'm sorry I'm narrating this. This is just to keep me honest. Oops. Wrong scene. There we go. Boom. All right. So now we're going to talk about The Quick and the Dead and have a bite of that trope soup. So take it away, Will.
Sweet. I get to talk your ear off some more. So The Quick and the Dead is a 1995 film directed by Sam Raimi that stars Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman, and a bunch of other people whose names are probably going to come up in my synopsis here in a second. Not to exclude Russell Crowe, who is very young, and Leonardo DiCaprio, who is really young. But the premise of the story is about a female gunfighter played by Sharon Stone, who is first only known as the Lady, who returns to the town known as Redemption, where she intends to track down and kill the mayor / gang leader, John Herod, who's played by Gene Hackman. But before she can do that, she ends up getting involved in a local shooting contest when she tries to save Court, who's played by Russell Crowe, who is supposedly a preacher who has been apprehended by Herod's gang. We later find out, too, that Court has had his previous experience in Herod's gang and was a very good shooter at the time, and Herod just has it out for wanting to make Court's life miserable for running away from that life and wants to see him get back into the dueling contest with everybody else. Mostly so he can have his very sort of weird, sadistic revenge against him. But we're also introduced to several other interesting characters who have come to duel, which I do want to get your feedback on here in a minute, so I won't go too much into those guys. But we do get to meet Herod's son, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who is known as the Kid, who, unfortunately, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the film yet, if you're listening, does not make it out. So we get a little bit more through flashback about why the lady is there, what happened to her father, and we find out that Herod's gang overthrew the town and apprehended her father, who was the marshal at that time, and they're about to hang him, and then they find her, and Gene Hackman gives her a gun and says, if you can shoot your father off the lynch, then we'll set him free. And she's crying, and he tells her it's okay, and she aims and fires and shoots him like right in the forehead. So we learn the reason why she has it out for Herod's character and has come back into town. And at the end of the film, after there's a little trickery to make Herod think that she's been killed in a fight with Court, we get treated to some exciting explosions as half the town gets blown away by dynamite that's been set up secretly. And then we get a satisfying shootout between the lady and Herod, who is finally defeated. So with that in mind, as always, general first impressions or second impressions, revisiting the film. And May, I'm actually going to turn it over to you first to get your feedback. And also, if you'd like to tell me who your favorite gunfighter might have been, or one of them. All
right. So I don't usually like Westerns, and I am surprisingly fond of this movie now. I don't know. I think there is a lot of poetic, dramatic irony that's just laced throughout this film. And as I'm sure we'll talk about later, it does fully embrace all of its tropes and commits 100%, which I think works for the film. Still some parts I didn't love. But yeah, overall, I found it kind of endearing. I never quite understood why everyone hated Court so much. Like that was a bit over the top, but I think it's just so they could have a punching bag character. Yeah, overall I liked it. Favorite gunslinger though, I guess so. As much as I love Ellen as a character, and she does seem to be kind of this like I don't know, I could read her as like a, just your standard female gunslinger, but I think she's also kind of like death incarnate in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And like I think has like some broader metaphorical significance. But just like if I was there watching a gunfight, I think I would definitely pick the kid as my favorite, just because he's working the crowd. He's got pizzazz. He doesn't always shoot to kill. In fact, it seems like he tries not to shoot to kill generally. So yeah, I gotta go with the kid.
Solid choice. And not just because it's Leonardo DiCaprio.
I mean, of course, but
solid. Oh man. I think that probably I know he was in stuff before this film, but I feel like this was probably the earliest I've ever seen him in a movie. Because the other stuff, I mean, that I've heard of, I don't think I've watched. So, but yeah, that's yeah, good choice. All right, Chris, tell us how you feel coming back into the ring. Well, not the ring, the gunfight.
Yeah, this is I think a really, really fun movie. Like I said, I enjoyed it more even the second time around than I did the first. Knowing like, I mean, I knew it was going to be kind of silly and goofy the first time I saw it, but like really having a sense of where the plot was going to go and what the tone was actually going to feel like. I think on the one hand, there's times where it plays it like very straight, and then there's like a Raimi touch, like somebody getting shot through the eye and doing like 3 backflips, like as a result of it. That's just like fucking great. And only like same, or like having a hole that you can see through like a cartoon character, like in their body. So yeah, like I really, really just enjoy it. I think it's a Western I would recommend specifically to people that aren't fan of Westerns, with the pitch of like, it's silly, like it knows it's silly and it doesn't try to not be silly, and it's something that you're allowed to have fun with. It's not trying to necessarily tell any kind of moral story. Like, sure, I mean, there's like it's a revenge tale, whatever, but like it's not trying to like have like a heavy message or anything like that. And I think that makes it approachable probably for a lot, like versus something like Unforgiven, which is like got some really intense sequences of violence, but for most of that nearly 3-hour movie, it is a lot of talking and musing on like past sins and like abuse and like what makes somebody pretty, like and stuff like that. So favorite gunfighter is definitely the kid. Doesn't even need a hype man. He is his own hype man. I'm on another level, like I just every freaking scene is just so great. Even though like he's kind of being a little cocky asshole, it's so funny. Like he's like bragging that like he like slept with Sharon Stone, and she's like, yeah, you were puking your guts out in the alley, kid, like whatever. Just really, really good banter with everybody. And I think he's got probably one of the more interesting arcs that's like followed through like all the way, in terms of like wanting to surpass his father, and who says like at the end he tries to pull some Maury Povich shit of like, you don't have a DNA test, like that was never proven he was my kid, by the way. But yeah, it's definitely my favorite of the gunfighters. Close seconds the lady, Ellen. Yeah, I mean, this is Sharon Stone at peak Sharon Stone-ness.
It's true, man.
And I think Basic Instinct was like a year before that, like maybe 2 years before this. Yeah.
Man, so I'm imagining that drew like a big crowd just based on that alone.
Probably,
at least back in the day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, it's probably like the 3rd time I've seen this film, and I'd agree with you. I think that it's campy, and it's just it's trying to play with all the the features of a Western, but just have fun with it, not take it seriously. Like it's sort of on par with like a more violent version of like, I guess I'm thinking of TV shows now, but like Briscoe County Jr., which had Bruce Campbell, or even like Nicodemus Legend. I guess Legend was the name of the TV show, but I think that was Richard Dean Anderson. And so it was sort of like we're sort of Western for most of it, kind of. We're in that realm, but we're sort of our own world in that version of it. And maybe even arguably like a little bit of steampunk thrown in there with some of like the retro looks for like sunglasses and pipes and stuff. But just like really cool little details in some of the costuming. But yeah, I think overall, I think it's effective because it's sort of like the same way that anime is over the top in a lot of ways, but also entertaining for the worlds that it creates. So I think that that's why this works as well, and also why I gravitate toward it. So, but yeah, if if you went into this expecting a serious movie, that's like going into Starship Troopers and thinking it's a serious film and being like, what is this cartoon that I'm watching right now? So, word to the wise, yeah, don't go into it with like. It's not like Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns. It's not like Clint Eastwood. So
no.
But it's definitely trying to play off the same sorts of tropes, which we can talk about here in a minute. Like those. I think that in terms of gunfighters, man, if you guys are both going to go for DiCaprio, I got to hold it down for some of the other folks that showed up to the party, right? So like, I got to hand it out to Cantrell, played by Keith David. Who, if you don't know Keith David, every deep authority figure in a film is that dude. Like Armageddon, he's the general. Like, he is. I love listening to that guy talk, and especially when he's playing a character that is having fun too. Like when he's laughing, like he thinks he's gonna best Herod in this movie, and he's been hired on to come and murder him by people in the town because they want him out, and he's just so sure of himself, and he's actually pretty decent up until the point where they fight, and then he gets his ass handed to him, and also gets like half his head blown away. One of those, over the top cartoonish things, like there's no way that gun would do that or that it would look like that, but what a wild shot, and so I'd have to go with him. Probably a close second for Ace because you know what? I want to know that dude's backstory. I would watch an expanded universe of these characters to see how they all tied into this film, and if they were willing to do that.
He's like a WWE fighter. He's got the whole persona, the shtick.
That's right. He's gonna, combing a little bit on everything, getting ready, doing yeah, it's very true. He is a wrestler. That's right. You're right.
Most stuff.
Oh man. So yeah, his performance acting was pretty solid. So well, thank you both for your love for DiCaprio and also your feedback on that. I'm glad you both liked it. And so I guess the next question that I've got is, since this is trope soup, let's talk about some tropes. Was there any in particular? And I guess I'm thinking about Western style tropes, but I do want to hear about other tropes outside of that in just a moment. But for this first question, of the Western tropes that you're familiar with, which stood out to you the most in this film? And it could be something you thought worked well. You could be something that you thought detracted from it if you don't think it worked well, but just some of the stuff that stood out to you the most. And Chris, I'm gonna throw it back over to you first on this one.
I will try to contain myself because I have lots and lots and lots.
Chris proceeds just to list the entire movie.
Yeah.
See my scene.
So a few of my notable ones is like sort of the archetype of like the mysterious gunfighter. So thinking to like the Man with No Name and like the Dollars trilogy, or the Man with the Harmonica from Once Upon a Time in the West, where you have little to no backstory or motivation, and sometimes it's revealed. I should say usually it's revealed if there is motivation in like the very final act, usually through a flashback scene. Something that very much this movie does with the character of the lady, right? Even the fact that she doesn't have really a name until the end of the movie is very tropey. The camera work was very reminiscent of Leone's spaghetti westerns, in particular those close-up shots and rapid cutting back and forth in the midst of like the anticipation of the gunfight, just straight ripped out of Leone. And Yeah, like that's what I want in like these kind of movies. And I love that Tarantino has kind of ate that for his Mexican standoffs, like in other like genres. It's something that's really, really fun. The music, obviously, big part of any Western. I feel like there's sort of expectations that people have a lot of the time. You got to have some fiddles, you got to have some guitars, and sort of that Western sound. Not necessarily like Ennio Morricone, like it's not quite a spaghetti Western, but there's some little hints of that. I would say I'll limit myself to maybe one more here, and I think it's having the town that is ruled by like the, I don't know, crime syndicate lord, whatever, like the guy who is the big bad and everybody sort of is afraid of and pays tribute to, and that sort of like is like the guy of the town is probably the other one. Again, you see this in the Dollars trilogies a lot. You see it in Unforgiven. Like it's one of those things that's just like all throughout the history of Westerns. There's almost always a big bad that has the town under his boot. I will stop there. But yes, those are the ones that are probably the ones that stood out the most, and the ones that I thought were used best in this film.
The dynamite.
Yeah.
That'd be my favorite. A little foreshadowing there, just a bed of dynamite.
It's like Chekhov's gun a little bit. You're like, well, that's coming into play.
Yeah. So that was great. If for no other reason than just having Herod surrounded by fire in that final fight, so Ellen could walk through it like this like wraith of death, all dramatically. Besides that, I would say obviously like dueling is very much a Western thing, but the way it was shot, where every duel there are like more of those dramatic cuts between the duelists and to the clock, like it just got more and more over the top with every single one.
Yep, that's true. Like zooming in, like really quick zoom ins each time. Get a little bit closer, cut to the next person, get a little bit closer, cut to the next person. Yeah.
There was one where I could have sworn it was going to like be like just their eyelash on the next.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is too close, guys.
Yeah, back up. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's true. The dueling for me is probably like the one thing, because I was curious about how much that actually happened, and for what it sounds like, not a whole lot. If it did happen, it was a lot less quote unquote civilized, a lot less we're gonna stand in two places and a crowd's gonna come join us, or we're gonna just like wait until, I don't know, count it off or wait until the clock strikes and then go for it. It was more just like, we're both drunk and you pissed me off and now I'm gonna shoot you, and not to say that it didn't happen, but I think it's sort of interesting that sort of I guess Mexican standoff, or that sort of gun shooter, one-on-one combat style seems to have been like, that's what we all like go to a Western to check out, or that we expect is going to happen at some point in the film. Chris, it's funny you mentioned the music too, because I feel like the guy who did the score for this also did Back to the Future Part 3. So there's little bits where I felt like I'm listening.
He did all the Back to the Futures and Predator as well. They got a little Predator time where I was like, oh, there's that iconic like Alvin Silvestri sound. But yeah,
the tension building. That. So I guess I just say Back to the Future Part 3 because that was Western, and that's why it's sort of like I get that sort of like crossover feel to it. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think those are probably the main ones that I would mention for tropes. But yeah, the dueling stuff, man. Or like there's always the saloon, and there's always the seedy characters. And there's that, like you mentioned, the general lawlessness, I guess, essentially, if there's like either the big bad or it's just like everything's just sort of falling apart. There's probably like, I guess there wasn't so much in this film, so I don't know if it's something to mention then, but I feel like there's usually like that one sort of like, I guess there is sort of a preacher maybe that, does that feel like that comes up a lot? There's like usually like a religious figure, or there's one older gentleman in the town who's sort of like holding out hope but he doesn't necessarily want to be
Yeah,
the guy to
there's
sit
like
in.
the mentor, like sometimes they're a preacher, sometimes they're a doctor or healer. Again, like going back to the Dollars like trilogy, you think about the person that mends up Clint Eastwood in the
Mm,
first, after he gets his ass kicked, like, you know, in Fistful of Dollars, and allows him to come back for his like final stand at the end, or like the doc or Marshall in Tombstone. I don't know, like that's something you see
mm,
a lot for sure,
yeah.
is like somebody is the older moral center of the town, you know, whether it's faith or science, whatever.
And then there's usually like, at least in this, I always kind of laugh every time when the lady or Ellen comes into town, and there's the guy who's making all the caskets, who like
Yeah,
instantly guesses what her height is.
yeah, oh yeah,
And I'm like,
the
yeah,
Undertaker, that is
yeah.
definitely
Um,
no horror with the heart of gold. That's another trope that you see in a lot of westerns that I was kind of glad that they
mm,
like, you know, shrugged off. I mean, sometimes it's done well. Like I think Deadwood's a great example of like, because that character has growth. Like I groaned. I was like, oh man, like a show this modern is doing like the horror with the heart of gold. And it's like, oh, okay, like this person actually has like a good character trajectory where they like shake that mold off, and kind of subverts your expectations that way. But they kind of make a nod to it where he's like horrors like in that building, and then she
mm,
yanks him off the ladder, and it's like, all right, there we go.
Yeah, I
There's,
actually surprisingly really liked how this film handled like period sexism as well as feminism, because I feel like when you have a female action protagonist like this, there's a tendency to do one of two things. Basically, have all the characteristics of your typical like male action hero and just cast a woman.
yeah.
Or to do kind of the shitty like you said, Horror with a Heart of Gold, or like um I don't know, just like have her being like I'm doing this for women and feminism kind of thing, where it just feels hollow. And it's like, no, she has real personal stakes. She is, you know, hard when she needs to be hard, and then she's more sensitive when, you know, things are overwhelming, like with Herod, or when she sees that girl get taken advantage of and she's like, nope, I'm fighting for you right here, right now. So yeah, I really liked how she is as a character. She's not like unbelievably cold or unbelievably like weak.
So now that we've talked about the tropes that you've all noticed that are typical westerns, are there other tropes that sort of came up in the film that you felt like existed? I mean, that you've seen in several films before that you thought also worked? And there might be a little bit of overlap here, since some tropes in westerns have been used in other films. But I was just curious if there was anything else that you saw that was particularly tropey, trope tasting, that you thought, I've seen that before, but maybe not necessarily in a western. So May, I'll toss it back over to you first.
Oh no, the protagonist is dead right before the climax. They're definitely not coming back to life.
Why did I watch this movie? Why did you read this thing to me, Grandpa?
So that's a classic, as well as like using some kind of fake blood in a shootout. Like, come on, did you really fall for that, Herod?
Yeah, I could see that. Also feels like Back to the Future a little bit too, with the little trick at the end. But Chris, how about you?
definitely some of the gunfighting at the end was like, it was getting a little like gung fu-y, which was cool. Like a lot of stylized action where I was like, it wasn't just fanning the, you know, the hammer and the, I mean, like literally at one point I think Russell Crowe is just like dual wielding and doing crisscross shots with like a rifle and a pistol and stuff like that. So that felt like a little tropey like of the time for like 90s action for sure.
Mhm.
Um, you could argue that at this time, casting Gene Hackman as your villain was like a surefire like way to just like like ensure that the audiences were gonna buy into that he was the bad guy. So like it's, you know, he just was a villain in this time period in a lot of things.
I was gonna say, or that Gene Hackman at some point is gonna like lose his shit and just like spaz out and either like shout at somebody in their face or like slap them. So I feel like it's very much like Crimson Tide, you know, like where he was the captain who just like loses it at Denzel. Just that build up, that little snark, and then just like right in your face. So
yeah, his character in this was like very similar to the one in Unforgiven. Like the only difference is like he's a lawman in Unforgiven. And he's like a bit more like serious and down to earth, but and he's also kind of played for like laughs at the expense of others, like because he's building his retirement home, and like there's the joke of like there's not a straight angle in that whole damn house, like, and it's just constantly leaking when it rains and shit. Like anyway, whereas like this character is sort of, you know, like just kind of feared, I guess, and not really respected, but yeah, it has a very nice house.
yeah, per time, yes. That is true. I think for me, sort of the tropiness of it is like having a character where, or having a protagonist where they end up in the situation where they want to be in, and they're like right like 2 steps away from their goal, and they just don't do it. I mean, yeah. Like
I'm a sucker for a drawn out tense dinner scene. Like that is
we're gonna have some, you know, some plot develop, I guess character development, maybe some backstory. It's backstory, right? That's, you know, and so we have to understand our villain as to what their motivation, what's their motivation for this while they're peeling an apple to symbolize, you know, whatever. And yeah, so I think that gets a little overused, where it's like you were right there and you could have done it, and then you're just like you hesitated. And I get hesitation, like protagonists have weaknesses too, I understand that, but I just think it's funny, there's always like that little something that catches them at the last second, like, oh no, maybe I shouldn't try this. Come back tomorrow. And then they'll just let me leave, you know, it's fine, we know we're antagonistic, but it's okay, we'll sort this out after, you know, the sun comes back up or something. But so that's probably what
I want to see that scene happen, and like you're like, oh, there's like an hour and 15 left, like no way this is going down, and then like it actually goes down, and then like there's a mid you know, film shift. That would be great. Be fantastic.
Yeah, Tarantino do that, you know, subvert our expectations and then just change the film up to something completely different. Do you think that there were any other, I guess, cinematic tricks, and this is a little bit broader, just in terms of it can be tropey, but it doesn't have to be, but any other sorts of aspects to the film, cinematic or cinematography or film, or geez, words not working, cinematography or score or characters or actors, even just like the little details, some of the cool little details to like the costume design or things of that nature that really stood out that you thought added to the story in the world that it was sort of creating within a Western backdrop, that stood out to you. So with that very convoluted question in mind, Chris, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Yeah, I think like the sense of space, having like the small town by the end of the movie, like you know geographically kind of where everything is, the clock tower, the saloon, Herod's house, all that stuff. It worked, the set design as well. I think played into that. Yeah, I think like the fact that like they're setting the film like in the same town where everything went down to kind of motivate the lady is kind of neat. That she destroys it at the end, you know, it's a very like literal undoing of the past to sort of rid herself of it, and both killing Herod but also destroying the town. Pretty cool, something that you see in certain films. Like again, I know I keep going back to Eastwood, but like Eastwood directed Western, what was the High Plains Drifter, I think is what it's called, where like he paints the entire town red and then changes the name to hell, and then when the three men that he wants to take his revenge arrive, they're like, what is going on like here? It's very similarly like that he's kind of set out to not just go for revenge of the people but also like undo the place. That was kind of cool. Not super tropey, but it was definitely like a specific kind of nod, I thought, to to that.
A trope I didn't like is like the weird mysticism around the Native American character. I didn't think that aged great, especially since it's then played for like laughs later. I also love how none of us have really talked about Court. I think it's like almost a distraction from the main plot of the film to like have him there, and he's not very likable either. Like he has all this whole thing about being a man of God now, and then just like almost no preaching for a preacher. It's very strange. Yeah, I don't love Court.
I can confess, I don't like most Russell Crowe like roles. I feel like he's kind of a wet blanket, and this movie is no exception for me. So
yeah. So yeah, I think Court kind of detracted from the main storyline, and I wish we'd focus less on him. I think it's cool to have him in the film as a character, but if they were going to give him that much screen time, I think they should have developed him a bit more. Another thing I did love, since you mentioned fashion, though, is like Ellen's outfits were amazing. I am so impressed with how they convey that she's a bit more feminine with like the embroidery on a lot of her stuff, while still keeping it very rugged and like more masculine than say like the dresses people might have been wearing. So I thought that was genius costuming wise. And I also appreciated that this did not end up in a romance.
yes. Yeah, great point. I forgot to mention that, and I'm glad you did. Platonic, especially in this time period, is so ripe to just like have some 11th hour like I don't know bullshit happen.
Yeah, I think it would have killed it, especially since I don't like Court. But no, it is. I don't know. I feel good. I guess we'll probably talk about the end of the film, but yeah, I don't know how I feel about Ellen just riding off and like passing the badge to Court. I get why she didn't want to stay at all.
Yeah.
So I guess that it makes sense in that way. She's just trying to get out, and Court is like the least shitty person to hand that to. But
give it to the old man from Home Alone, whatever that guy's name was.
Yes.
True. That would have been
Like,
better.
right.
That would have been better. But I do like how she just
deserving.
rides back off into the fire like this like just angel of death and destruction.
Yes.
Yep.
I do like when she rides off into the, well, I guess not really the sunset, but rides off into the distance, and then just leaves Court there with the choice.
My job is done.
Yeah, he hardly even argues. He's like, I'm not gonna kill anybody. Oh shit, sorry, he's dead. And listen, but I'm not gonna kill. Boom, like, oh, sorry, I did it again. Like you could just let them kill you. Like if you really are that, like, I don't know, man. Like I don't fully
did it again.
Yeah, I don't really trust that character fully, and like I'm like, is he your best choice? Like,
nope.
Come on.
He thinks if you just ask for forgiveness, you'll get it. I don't know if that's enough, my dude.
Pretty checkered past, and like I know that they try to paint him as like this reformed guy, but his actions throughout the entire movie pretty much demonstrate that like he's kind of still a bastard, like deep down, and maybe always will be. But
likes how that gun sounds when you roll the chamber. Oh man, I did actually like that scene where they're talking about guns with DiCaprio with the kid, because he's running the little shop, and Herod brings him in and is like, oh, see what basically is like condescending to his son for running the shop, but also wants him to find like a decent gun for Court to use. And then after all the like, the shiny, cool looking ones that the kid goes through, then it ends up being, well, what's the cheapest one you got that'll actually like fire? And ends up with like what looks like this rusty piece of shit. But even the kid's like, I wouldn't sell it to you if it didn't shoot straight, and so that I just like the interplay with that scene beforehand, and also getting to see just how much Court does still like to do that. You could tell, and he just
his hands twitching.
Yeah, like he's ready, man. He just wants to feel that cold steel. And yeah, so I agree. I wouldn't trust him.
a better Russell Crowe character is in 310 to Yuma. As the
Oh, yeah.
outlaw. I don't know if I can't know why his name is escaping me. I just rewatched it. But like if you want a good Russell Crowe Western audience and you haven't seen that one, it is amongst the best modern Westerns, and he is way more personality in that and gets to play kind of the anti-hero villain. But sorry, I digress. Have you seen that, Will? Have you seen 310? Or you may?
Yes, I have. It's been a while, but yeah, I agree.
Listen out over here.
James Mangold. So if you like his style of filmmaking, like guy that made Logan and is doing the new Indiana Jones, like
I didn't know about Indy. I might still have to go see it just for nostalgia.
well, of course, there's no way a new indie movie's coming out. I'm not going to see it. Like even if it's terrible, like, it can't be much worse than the most recent one. But
yeah,
you say this. Don't set that bar.
It's got Mads Mikkelsen. It's automatically going to be better than the last one. Like, although the last one had Kate Blanchett, I guess.
I was gonna say, I thought that was my rationale too. All right. Oh man, communist Kate Blanchett. I mean, I'm there, but anyway, I digress as well. I think Westerns are definitely one of those films where it's sort of like, for me, and this is just a random comment, that when somebody asks me what Westerns I've seen, and I'm just like, I haven't really seen that many. And then like we've talked about several already, and I'm like, I either know of that or I have actually watched that. It's just been a while. It's not usually like a go-to genre for me, but every once in a while it'll be one that'll come up that I think is actually pretty good, or that will inspire me to want to go back and watch the original. Like you mentioned 310 to Yuma. Have you, that's a remake, right? Like they made the I don't remember what year, unfortunately,
60s, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll have to go back and see that, or like some of the other stuff that they've tried to like popularize and redo. Like they redid what, Magnificent Seven, and then it's probably like a handful of other ones,
which in and of itself was a remake of a Kurosawa film, Seven Samurai. Right. Yeah, you could argue that like the modern Western really was kind of ripped off from samurai films from 50s Japan. I think like they owe so much. And I mean that's just the, not to say that completely disparagingly. So much of like art is sort of borrowing from other genres and countries and things like that. But yeah, like a lot of the best Westerns that are like 60s and beyond, and whether spaghetti Westerns or Hollywood Westerns, kind of owe a lot to some of that, those samurai films for sure. But yeah, no, you're right. It's a hard genre to get right, and I think like that's what makes it's great that this movie works, because it sort of leans into all the tropes versus trying to tiptoe around them, right? Like sometimes that's the best strategy for something like this, and you could tell he just wanted to have fun.
Well, guys, as we come to the end of our duel, are there any other thoughts, whether about the ending, if we want to just kind of wrap up with some final thoughts about that, or anything else that stood out to you about the film that you want to make sure that we talk about?
I don't think we've covered everything. Shout out to Gary Sinise, who's in this for like maybe sub 2 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
I just want to say, and I know this is not necessarily like inversing a trope. In fact, I think it is probably its own trope. But I do like that Ellen is a reluctant protagonist at times, because you have people that are, hell-bent on destruction, but also just kind of like unstoppable forces of nature, like in No Country for Old Men. But Ellen like hesitates frequently. She also like tries to run away from the town and then goes back to the graveyard. And I don't know, I appreciate the wavering. I feel like it builds suspense personally.
Yeah, it's unexpected too, because she seems so determined at the beginning. Like your introduction to that character is that she's just going to be like this like salty, mean, surly, like gunslinger all the time.
Yeah.
And I think you get your first glimpse of it in the evening at the bar, where she's having, you don't know it at the time if it's your first time watching it, but she's having some flashbacks to what happened with her father in the chair and that whole thing. That's where you kind of see some of that like indecision and sort of like humanity creep through a little bit, which is it's a brilliant scene. I like that scene a lot.
There's also the fact that Court looks very much like her father, Like in that moment, I was like, "Oh, is that the guy that she had a picture of? That's weird." And then I realized later that was dumb. But
No, it's a good point though.
Sure, that was very triggering for her.
Yeah.
So much so that she triggering, get it?
Hey.
She shoots him down. Oh, literally true.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's all that I've got. So thank you very much for being willing to join me on this nice little adventure of watching Sharon Stone shoot the shit out of Gene Hackman. Before I guess, well, at this point, we should turn it over and play a nice little game. Are you both ready for what is to come with that?
Yeah,
always
we're gonna
ready.
bring back a shot in the dark where
Yeah,
May and I are going to attempt to describe the plot of a film that we've not seen based on our pop culture knowledge and exposure to like whatever trailers, stills, memes. And Will has a list of both of our films, and I believe is going to designate the films that we're going to have to try to describe. So
I don't like that face, Will.
Yes, I'm so ready. So ready. All right. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first since I've not done this before. I feel like that's only fair.
All right, Chris. I think you knew this was going to happen. So I would very much like for you to tell me. I'm sorry, I'm having second thoughts. There's some pretty good stuff on this list that you've got over here. But no, I'm going to go with my first cut, which is I want you to tell me what you think Interstellar is all about.
All right. So I'm going to go half serious, half silly with this probably.
Yes, please.
So I am reasonably sure that Matthew McConaughey is either a farmer and or scientist that is tasked with going on some sort of interstellar mission to solve some sort of crisis. I'm not sure if it's a food crisis or some other kind of like climate crisis on Earth. There's some kind of crisis that he's got to do it. And I think he knowingly goes on this journey knowing that he's gonna like leave behind loved ones that are going to age out because of time dilation. I think Anne Hathaway's involved somewhere in there. Like I seem to remember some scenes where they're in like spacesuits next to each other, some stills that I've seen. I think Michael Caine is somewhere in there. Michael Caine is like I failed you. I failed the Earth. Maybe he's like the reason that there's a crisis is he did something wrong. I don't know. At some point he cries real hard because I've seen that. Like I'm gonna guess that he forgets to file his taxes since it's tax season now, and he's just watching his balance like skyrocket in real time on his screen. And he can't do anything about it because it's time dilation. That's how it works. In all seriousness, I'm sure it's some sort of like I don't know, compilation video as his daughter's growing older or something like that. Maybe like a series of messages, and maybe he's like watching her get old in real time and seeing the stuff that she's doing while she's away. And he's crying from like happiness of like, oh, pride, whatever, and then like also sadness at the stuff that he missed out on. I'm gonna guess that he's probably successful in his mission, and what I really got to decide is like, is there some sort of human sacrifice element to it? I'm going to say, yeah, like he dies in some sort of heroic gesture at the end, because it seems like it would be kind of hard for him to come back and reintegrate into society, maybe with everyone being older, but I have no fucking clue. That's the best I can do with this movie based on what I know. So
my personal favorite of that was watching his taxes.
Yes.
Exponentially get destroyed.
Interstellar is actually the film of a man that flies to another galaxy because of tax evasion.
Yeah, he's like, you can't charge me with tax evasion if I'm not on Earth. Like
oh,
yeah, maybe he just decides not to save the Earth. He's like, joke's on you, motherfuckers. Like
I owe too much, I can't go back. Yeah.
I was laughing to tie that I think they're all the other reason that was in my brain was like it's apparently like it's a real thing that happened during the Apollo 13 crisis was that Swigert forgot to pay his taxes, and so like as they're about to like go like boost off, he's like, can somebody file an extension for me? And like the guys in the control room are like, oh no, they'll like come after him, dude. Like that's a serious thing. It's not funny. And like as they're like, they're up there going through the crisis, like to lift their spirits, they're like, hey, good news, the IRS is gonna cut you a break on those. They don't know if they're gonna make it back. And he's like, well, that's a relief. Like, thank you. So that's also, I think,
shit.
where that kind of, I just rewatched that movie and that jogged that loose. So there you go. There's some inspiration.
What a thing to like realize when
You're about
like
to go take off to the moon. Yeah.
It's like realizing you left your stove on.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh man, I needed that.
Well, please don't spoil because I do want to watch this. But
yeah,
how accurate is the serious bits? Like, like what am I, like 50% of the way there, 40%? Like,
I thought it was going to be like a comparative score between us.
Okay, we can wait to reveal. That's probably a good idea. Will can decide on whatever bullshit criteria he wants to make up, like who got closer to the real thread. So
I had it at tax evasion. You had me there. No. Yeah, so I would say overall for like the main points, most of it probably like 50 to 75%. Yeah, you're pretty spot on. Of course, the details and everything that happened between point A and point C or whatever, you will definitely have. I will love to see your reaction when you finally see the film. But yeah, it's totally worth it. And I was just grateful to be part of this ride with you. So, oh man, I needed that laugh. Seriously, that was great. All right, May, are you ready?
Fingers on the trigger.
All right. I would like for you, I'm going to keep this also science fiction. I would like for you to describe for me the plot of Alien.
Okay. Just saying up front, this is going to be tough because there have been so many movies. I'm not sure which memes I've seen have been from which movie.
Just adds to the confusion.
There's a spaceship. Sigourney Weaver's on it, along with some other people that are not as hot. And they are flying through space. And it's kind of like a very dark industrial ship, not like super friendly. It's not like the ship from WALL-E. Anyway, they're flying through space and some like weird stuff happens with the ship. There's some like system failures and shit. And someone like starts getting sick. And they're not sure if there's like an alien on the ship or what, but a sick person just like one day chilling in a sick bed, next second there's something poking out of his stomach. Not sure what that is, but it crawls out. It's clearly alive. The poor dude's dead. Everyone freaks out, running, screaming. Whatever came out of his stomach like mutates a bunch of times, becomes more and more horrifying, tries to eat Sigourney Weaver. At some point, either before or after the alien appears, I think there's like a sex scene or something. I don't know how she's horny with an alien on board, but you do you, girls.
Oh my god. Great. I'm pretty sure I know where some of these inspirations are coming from. It's fantastic.
Yep.
And eventually Sigourney Weaver and like a child are the only two left on the ship. The alien has killed everyone else, and they're able to triumph at the end of the day, killing the alien, or maybe having a peace agreement with it, probably killing it. But you realize at the very last second in the film that one of the alien babies escaped, leading to a sequel.
Dun dun dun.
That's all I got.
I feel like a lot of what you mentioned is definitely grounded in the Alien universe and series
Yes.
of films that have come out. So
I
I
say
could definitely see the influences, like Chris was saying.
you secretly described the plot of several Alien movies like as part of one, honestly, like or plot points, like major plot points, which is
No.
pretty impressive.
That's what I was
Yep,
saying. I don't know what I've seen is like from which movie.
excellent. Well, I have to say that I would enjoy watching either of the two films that you've described, even if they're not like 100% accurate to the source material. So, I mean, I would totally watch that. So, and in fact, I've seen most of that as well. In like Chris said, in different versions. So, uh, hmm. All right. If there can only be one winner, if we can only have the Highlander in this, Chris, you had me at tax evasion. I'm serious. I don't know why. That just really got to me, and I feel that. So I got to go with that one, man. I like how this is sort of turned into like a sort of pitch storm version of describing a film that has already happened, and I think that makes it even better. So
We're
Yeah.
pitching the off-brand remake that'll be sold on DVDs only at like the flea market.
$4 Amazon, baby. Right next
Yep.
to Surf Ninjas.
It's kind of like in Trivia Murder Party, like when you like have to do your best to memorize like some pattern or something and you do your best to draw it and it comes out. You're like, well, that's kind of it's kind of what was on the screen a little bit.
Yeah, excellent. No, you guys were both great. I love both of them, and I honestly I am excited for when you both finally see those respective films to get your take on what you thought.
I have to watch a whole series though.
I mean, you could stop it. Arguably, you could definitely stop at 2 for Alien. If you want, to, see. I think 3 and Resurrection are interesting in their own ways. Like both ultimately probably not fully successful, but yeah, if you want to see what a French like art filmmaker makes of the Alien universe, you can watch Resurrections. That's the horny movie that you described.
Yep.
Very horny. And then if you want to see what studio meddling will do to a genius like David Fincher, who's disowned Alien 3, you can see what a studio meddling looks like. It's interesting result. So, but you could stop it too, though, if you want to see perfection. Like,
Yeah, I think
Alien,
I probably will, but
yeah.
I'm
Alien
really,
Aliens is
I'm
one of the
really
greatest
glad the
1-2
horny
punches.
scene was not just my imagination. That would have
No,
been
it is definitely not
embarrassing.
your imagination. Yeah, Sigourney Weaver requested specifically in sequels. She's like, I'll do sequels if I can have one where I never shoot a gun and if I could fuck an alien. And she may or may not get to do both of those things. And so, well, let's go ahead and pick our next film. So we decided on last week's podcast that poor May has had rotten luck. 6 films in a row have not been a May pick. 3 in a row, each for Will and I. So we will be drawing until we pick a May film. So there might be some awkward cuts here. Like, I apologize. I'm not even going to say there's not shenanigans going on, because I mean, by design, there is going to be shenanigans if we don't draw a May film. So let's see. Let me pull up my little list real quick and we'll see what we get.
Will and I just have to stay stock still while you look at these.
Nah, it's fine. Move away. That's all good. All right, I've got the spreadsheet up, so here we go. Let's see if we can get a May film on the first go. That'll be awesome. That's what we did last time. We just willed it into existence and
You made it happen.
made it happen. All right, let's see what this one is.
I'm sorry, there's nothing for your name, Chris. 2 out of 3 is not bad.
Christened it?
Yep. There we go. Yeah.
All right, you know
It
what?
is-
I take back what I said.
It was unfortunately not a May film, so there we go. The universe is pushing back hard. Let's see if this one is. It is also not a May film. Oh my gosh. I'm glad we instituted this rule, because man.
Would it just be Will for like months?
I feel like this is a May film based on the number, but hold please while I confirm. It is, and it's a banger at that. So the category is SFX Excellence. The film is Jason and the Argonauts, which, as you all know from my wall of Harryhausen behind me, big fan of Mr. Harryhausen and his special effects work. And this movie's great. I
I'm
haven't not
so excited
acquired
for
a
this.
figure. Yeah, I'm assuming you've seen it since you've nominated it. But
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I have
Fantastic.
been a mythology nerd since I was born, essentially. So big fan of Jason and the Argonauts. Watched it in high school. Just phenomenal stop motion and other cool stuff, which we will talk about.
Very good. Yeah, I'm excited. I have to get Talos is one of the figures I really want to get. That's the big metal man with the little valve in his ankle. And Medusa from Clash of the Titans, or not that anybody asked, but if you want to know what I'm hoping to put back there at some point, they're just expensive, like all like figures are. It's one of those like, you know, indulgences that's like dangerous to get into because then you're like, oh, that's so cool. And yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time since I probably would say like high school for me since I've seen this particular one, maybe college. It's just one of the ones that doesn't pop up on streaming for whatever reason as often as like say Clash of the Titans or Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. So I'm very excited to revisit this. Will, have you seen it before?
It's been a while, but yeah, I'm excited.
A rare triple, like everyone's seen it film. I love it.
Know.
Well, there you have it. That's our next film. Quick plug, you can find us at ScreenQuest Pod on Twitter. And of course, we have our live Google Form submission. If you want to be on the show, or you just simply want to nominate a film or a category for a side quest, toss them on in. We'd love to have your suggestions. Just make sure you put your contact information if you do want to appear on the show. And we'll be on the lookout for more of those and start adding those into the deck here very shortly. Thank you for listening, for watching, supporting the show. We love you, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.